remember why we're here. Thank you. I'd like to start off by welcoming a new member, Simon Crocker. Apologies. I've had Grumble, Councillor Chamberlain, Councillor Corning, Councillor Hart, Councillor Hunt, Councillor De Lacey, Councillor Lyons, Councillor Matthews, Councillor Page, Councillor Roberts and Councillor Wotherspoon and Councillor Riley. Declarations of interest. Thank you. Members are reminded about filling in their register of interest, which may change as time goes by. Can we look at the minutes, please? And the minutes of the last meeting, we'll go through them page by page. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, and page 14. Councillor Kinsley.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 14, in relation to the question that I asked, I did mention in, I think, my subsequent question, the issue of almshouses, and it isn't noted in the minutes. I wonder if it could be added, please.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else? Right. Moving on to announcements.
Sorry, minutes the meeting on 4 we're doing. Sorry, yes. There is a correction for minutes the meeting on 4. I was not actually present at that meeting. I give you my apologies.
Thank you. I'm sure we can amend
I
that.
have mentioned that too. Don't know.
Councillor Mann? Oh, right. Oh, I'm reminded there are 2 sets of minutes, so we'll move on to page 15. We have minutes of the council meeting held on Thursday the 4th of June. Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8. Everybody happy? Right. Moving on to announcements. It's with regret that I have to report the recent death of the former South Cambs District Council officer, Ralph Friday, who some members may remember. Mr. Friday started employment with South Cambs Rural Council in the late 60s. He then became Chief Building Control Officer of South Cambs District Council as part of local government reorganisation in '74 and retired in the early 90s, working for the authority for a total of approximately 30 years. So, I'm sorry about that. I also need to inform Council that a former councillor by the name of Val Truman, who was a Liberal Democrat and then became an independent of Melbourne, has also died. Some of you will remember. I'd like to move on to Chairman's Charity. You will have all noticed a lady with a dog downstairs. She's from Dogs for the Disabled, which is my charity. And we are now starting a little competition for everybody where you need to guess the name of the dog. That we're going to buy a puppy to be trained to help, hopefully, an autistic child. I say hopefully because it might not be suitable when it's grown to be trained. And I'm going to charge you £1 a time, and you'll find it in the members' room, a list of everybody's name. You put your name and drop your £1 in the pot, please. There's also a quiz on the 14th of October, and I'd like to see some member teams, please. 6 to a team, £6 a head, and you get fish and chips up. And what more could you want? Okay. And now a more important presentation, Investors in People. And I'm going to present this certificate to those who have worked extremely hard to acquire the gold certificate. And we're really proud of this. There's only 7% of UK organisations have achieved gold award, and people in this organisation, officers, have worked like mad to make it happen. So we asked a representative group of officers to come and receive the reward. There's Chelsea Cross, Resident Involvement Project Support Officer, who took part in our apprenticeship scheme and is now a fully fledged permanent and valued member of staff. Then there's Gemma Barron, a Sustainability Communities and Partnership Manager, who trained to become one of our team of workplace coaches and now works with others to help them realise their potential. Katie Brown, Revenues Manager, who took part in our secondment programme designed to enhance staff skills and competencies and to help apply existing transferable skills to new areas. Katie's secondment led to a promotion within the revenue team. Jill Anderson, Head of Housing Development. New Build, who has played an active part in our leadership development programme designed to harness the wealth of experience, ideas and talent from our management team to effectively address some of the major challenges and opportunities we face as a council. And Sean Mizzen, Procurement Officer, who has been an award winner in our Going the Extra Mile award scheme designed to encourage staff to nominate colleagues they feel have gone above and beyond to demonstrate the organisation's values, to deliver excellent customer service or to help others. It's great to see all our hard work recognised by external validation. Congratulations to all of them. Yeah.
Don't be shy, come on. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, councillors, if you'd like to stand back, hold Wheel yourself around this way slightly. Excellent. Right, okay. Right, please don't laugh. This is here we go. I'm going to try and get up on this side as well.
Thank
ridiculous. Right. Right. Questions from the public? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Manning.
Sorry about that. Two things. Some of you are probably aware Councillor Riley is not well and is in hospital. I wondered if we could ask the Chairman to send a card or a note on our behalf, wishing him all the best.
Yes.
Thank you. The other announcement I've got is Councillor Hockney has volunteered to stand down to civic affairs to allow our new councillor to have a place as a parish council chairman and I believe a parish council clerk. I believe he'll bring some expertise, and so we'd like to welcome him to that. And I would also ask if he could be put on the list of substitutes for court governance.
Agreed. Right. Item 6, questions from the public. We don't have any, but we do have a petition, and it's going to be presented by Jenny Salford.
Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for allowing me to come to the meeting today to present this petition on behalf of everyone who signed it. With millions of Syrian refugees being displaced over the last few years, the situation has reached crisis point and action needs to be taken now. Not only do we have a duty to help, but as this petition shows, we want to help. All over the country, groups are coming together and mobilising into action in any way they feel they can be useful. Cambridgeshire City Council have announced that they are willing to help. Today, the UN announced they will give at least €1 billion in measures to help. We would like the South Cambridgeshire District Council to look into accepting a proportionate number of refugees. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howard?
I wasn't expecting to speak quite so soon, Chairman. I would like to ask if I can speak at the end, if that's possible. I'm just looking across if that's possible. Yeah, I'd like to speak at the end. Thank you.
Anybody wish to speak on that topic?
No.
Councillor Vanderbilt?
As you mentioned, the civil war in Syria has forced more than half of the population of that country to leave their homes. 4 million people leaving the country, most of the surrounding countries. To give you an idea of the scale of this, Lebanon is a bit smaller than the east of England. It has a very similar population of about 5 million. It is just taking in 1 million Syrians, a 20% increase in the population. In the government scheme, the scheme that has they've proposed in the last couple of weeks to take in 20,000 over the next 5 years, the East of England might receive, say, 400 or 500 refugees a year. That's 0.2% of the numbers that are going to Lebanon. We know very well that other parts of the region and other parts of the country have more spare housing capacity than South Cambs. Even if we tried, we couldn't find places for hundreds of refugees. But this does not mean we should wash our hands of this problem. We should welcome the opportunity to help in whatever way we can. The idea of using some local facilities for transit or reception function has been mooted. The government scheme is specifically targeted at people in severe need of medical care. We have some of the best specialist medical providers in some fields, so we could be in a position to help a small number of those most in need without this impacting on the general population. We should also recall that the government scheme will last for 5 years. Even if there is nothing we can contribute now, there is no reason why we cannot plan to help in some way in future years. We are only going to find out what the needs are and what we could actually do by genuinely working with other bodies, in particular the County Council and the Strategic Migration Partnership. If we engage properly with this, we would have some influence over the scheme, and we would be able to find out how we can achieve things without the detriment to our existing vulnerable residents that we're all concerned about. More broadly, we must recognise that anything we do is only going to be successful if we bring our residents along with us. If all of our public pronouncements consist of listing the problems and complaining about the government, this simply won't happen. Instead, we need to make a strong, positive case for this, for why we have a role to play in addressing this humanitarian crisis. Of course, we need to explain clearly the potential negative consequences. By focusing just on these will not allow people to judge our efforts. Thus far, what have we had? We had an official press release that didn't even hint at least compassion for the refugees from the Civil War. And we've had a couple of media appearances from the leader in which he essentially minded about the government. Last week, the County Council and the Strategic Migration Partnership wrote to South Cambs asking for information about what support the Council might be able to provide, without any implied undertakings, just an idea of numbers or other ways of helping. I believe that the Council has responded to both, but we have not, Councillor Manning has not shared this response with us despite a direct request. This lack of engagement, this lack of communication, and this lack of empathy is shame on South Cambridgeshire. I urge the Council to support this petition and thereby get a clear message that we will seek to help in the face of a humanitarian crisis.
Councillor Bible.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to express my sympathy for Syria and for those whose lives have been destroyed by the war there. Christ teaches us that we should be compassionate and never walk away from people in need. All summer, people throughout South Cambridgeshire have watched their television screens, feeling helpless and wondering how we can do something to help those people caught up in that tragedy. David Cameron has provided us with the best response, which is to provide more funding for the refugee camps in countries close to Syria. And that means that people won't have to risk their lives to make a perilous journey into Europe. However, the proposal in this petition is not just about helping vulnerable people. It could also bind us in a blank cheque promise to accept a proportion of whoever arrives. When Angela Merkel made a similar promise to that before us today, she had no idea how many people would take up her offer. Even she has started to realise that she's made a catastrophic error of judgment. If the situation in Syria continues to deteriorate, which seems likely, we could find ourselves in a similar situation to that of Germany and other European countries, being completely unable to cope. Point C of the petition asks us to actively campaign to take part in some EU scheme, and that could lead to mandatory quotas being imposed upon us. The European Union has shown their incompetence this summer, the chaos, and experience has shown that they don't always operate in our best interests. This proposal hasn't been properly thought out, and I believe we should reject it. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I have no doubt that most of us, I hope all of us in this room, share Councillor Bigel's compassion for the refugees from the conflicts of Syria and elsewhere. And I would hope that we have an appetite to cooperate with government initiatives to accommodate and support the refugees who do come to this country, be it the right or the wrong thing for them to do, because it's an inevitability and they are going to come. Because Councillor Bigel has highlighted the complexities of this, it isn't a simple situation. It doesn't matter of just throwing money at a problem. You know, I fully realise that we have problems of our own to deal with, and it's very important to prioritise things. But because I think this is too big an issue for us to decide here and now, I would like to recommend that we establish a member-led refugee working group to oversee and manage the implementation of the government policies. I'd like to see a report from the chair of this working group to be a standing item on the Cabinet agenda for the duration of the emergency. I'd like to see a working group include representatives from all political groups on the council, and I would also suggest that this is established perhaps at the next available Cabinet meeting. We can't just dismiss this. We can't have a knee-jerk reaction to a situation that is resulting in the deaths of thousands of innocent people. We have to take it seriously, and regardless of what our response is going to be, it has to be a careful and considered response. Don't think we can do it here and now. I think it It needs long debate, long discussion. We need to know exactly what government proposals are. We need to be able to review our own resources. And I would hope that we would be able to embark on this with the compassion which Councillor Weigott started his speech with.
Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chairman. This situation that we have before us is one that we really need to think carefully about. We are lucky that we live in a country that doesn't have conflict. I have lived in a country where there was conflict. I have seen people affected by the conflict. The desperation that people show in the journeys that they're making from Syria to here, you can't even begin to imagine it unless you've seen it. Please, let us dig deep in our hearts and have real compassion. Not just the compassion that we can say we have by sitting comfortably in a nice first world countries. One of our nearly neighboring authorities has actually done something. Utelsco have actually created, as Councillor Bridges-Smith has said, a working party to look at this situation and to actually do something. Please, look deep in your heart. You don't have to take on all the burden. You just have to be willing to do something, not just say something. We can do something. We do have some space. We have Basingbourn Barracks sitting there empty doing nothing. I hear the groans, but please, look deep in your heart, is what I'm going to say to you. Real compassion. Let's show it. Let's not just talk about it. Thank you.
Councillor Manning.
I think somebody referred to an email or a response that I might have made. To me, this issue is more important, that we know what the long-term funding implications are. At the moment, we only know that the government is picking up the bill for the first year. That means that it could be this council picking up the bill for the following 3, 4, 5 years, because at the end of the 5 years, the families can actually opt to settle here rather than go back to Syria. Until we actually know all the details, until we know what we're being asked to do, until there's actually a proper plan, a proper coordinated plan between central government, the county council, who are the provider of 90% of these services, and then finally we talk to them and say which areas would be best. And if they say which areas they would like us to consider, then possibly we can turn around and say how many houses we could do or something like that. But to just pluck a figure out of the air strikes me as being, well, maybe it looks compassionate, but quite honestly it's not practical. And my reply on the 16th of September, by the way, I bought some copies in case you want these. My council is not in a position to make such an important and far-reaching commitment without more information and long-term funding guarantees. It would be wrong of me as leader to do this without giving my fellow councillors a chance to discuss the implications. As a district council, our powers are limited anyway. As I say, I brought copies along, but I really don't think that that is anything except giving council here today a chance to say what they think. And I really believe that this is not down to me, the leader, to make such an important and far-reaching I think it was wrong of them to ask me to do so. It's too big a commitment. We need long-term funding, we need organisation, we need to work with the county council, but above all, we need the government to join in. I absolutely agree with the bit about putting money into camps. I also agree with bringing families from the refugee camps to this country to settle them. What I don't agree with is encouraging people smugglers, economic migrants and everybody else to come in claiming they're from Syrians when some of the information we're getting is that actually 75 and 80% of the people claiming to be from Syria are not actually there. by taking these people from Syrian camps, and that we're avoiding people risking their lives crossing the Mediterranean and things like that. So, as far as I'm concerned, and finally the committee idea, I don't actually agree with that. We already have a portfolio system. You can go along and put your point of view to the portfolio, and it will be far quicker, because if we have to make a decision suddenly when all this is together, getting a committee together is very difficult. So, whilst it looks good on paper, I think it would be wrong. Anybody can go along to the portfolio meeting and have their say, and it will be quicker.
Councillor Hall.
According to the petition, the UK is accepting very few Syrian refugees. It should be added, but the UK is providing more money for the genuine refugees who are in camps around Syria. In fact, I think that the last time I've looked, there are about 1.25 million of these, and the UK is giving more money than Germany and France put together. Also, the United Nations is rapidly running out of money with which to sustain these people. These people are different from the migrants, and I make a distinction between migrants and refugees. The migrants are those from Syria and other places. They are very often professional, middle-class people, mostly young. You can see that many of them can speak English. When they're asked where they want to go to, they say Germany. They will not want to go back to Syria. On one hand, they don't want to be cannon fodder by Assad. On the other hand, they don't want to be under an ISIS regime. So I fully agree with Councillor Bigot and others who have said we must support the camps and let others look after, to a very large extent, those who are migrating through southeastern Europe, who are in fact migrants, not refugees.
Councillor Kinsley.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The human brain is actually not quite as advanced as we like to think. And so when we talk about figures like 6 million people in the Holocaust, or 30,000 people at Srebrenica, or 45% of an entire country population, it doesn't mean very much to us. It's simply a statistic. However, when you see a child dead with its face down on a beach, that is a tragedy, and actually that we can all, as humans, respond to. And this is the issue, isn't it? Is that many, many thousands of people in this country have responded to that. And as an example, I would like to point out a petition that has been set up by a Hazelingfield resident, Dr. Zoe Fritz. And she's petitioning via change.org. She's saying to the government, the people who are signing their names here wish to offer accommodation to Syrian refugees. Over 4,000 people, 4,000 families, 4,000 homes have offered to the government that accommodation. And many of those will be in South Cambridgeshire. So I don't think, actually, that anything that anyone has said in this chamber gainsays any of that. We have to talk in generalities, because generalities are all we can really understand about the enormity of this problem. So the general question that came from government was, is South Cambridgeshire District Council willing to help? We don't know how, when, who, how many, anything like that. Is there a willingness, the generality of willingness? Now, for many of us, there is. I want to help. The Bible teaches the story of the Good Samaritan. The point about the Good Samaritan, it was a foreigner helping. I want to help. Hundreds of others want to help. I would like the District Council, this District Council, of which I have been a proud member since 1999, I would like this District Council to say, we have a willingness to help. That's all.
Councillor Cathcart.
I certainly share a lot of the sentiments expressed. This country's always had a good record of actually trying to do what it can, and I'm sure that will continue. Councillor Hall mentioned a particular location. I think we've got to be very careful that we don't actually prejudge anything. What we need to do is to get look at the facts. We need to look at the principle of what we do. It's certainly premature to look at particular locations. And certainly the locations you mentioned, I would question its feasibility in the light of the fact that we have people coming from a war zone. The last place they would want to be is a barracks, reminding them of warfare and of conflict. We need to certainly develop, as I say, Councillor Kinsley mentioned, one-for-one relocations, and people are willing to help. That is probably the best way forward. We need to actually facilitate that, and we need to keep an open mind about how the situation develops and look in practical terms at what we can do. But we do need to be very, very careful about actually jumping into things which actually can make things worse. So let's move forward, let's do what we can, and let's not be premature in what we do, and do what we can to help. Thank you.
Councillor Williams?
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I'd like to second Councillor Smith's the recommendation that we set up a special task force. The leader says that we're basically writing an open cheque, but actually the government's made it quite clear what the parameters will be for accepting refugees. I took great exception actually, somebody suggesting that there are genuine refugees and there are, by implication, non-genuine refugees. That's quite a disgraceful. We know exactly what the government wants to do. Personally, I don't think it's enough. But the government has said that it wants to accept 20,000 refugees from camps over the next 5 years, and that it will be targeting young children and those vulnerable people. So we know really what we are expected to do. 5,000 people a year is not across the whole UK, is actually a pitiful amount, and certainly, you know, in terms of South Cambs, we're not talking in terms of thousands, we're not even talking in terms of probably hundreds. And it does, I think, a great shame on this authority that we cannot say that we will be prepared to support the government in its efforts to deal with this crisis. Now, these people are fleeing not from just a dictatorship, they're fleeing from being gassed, they're fleeing from being bombed. You see these people on television every night, they are taking great chances in crossing the Mediterranean. You know, you don't do that unless you are desperate. And yet this council is saying, we think we should just hold back a bit here. I mean, because these may not be genuine refugees, and it may cost us some money to look after these people. What a disgrace. And I find it particularly disgraceful that our leaders should have taken that stance with the county council.
Councillor Bard?
Yes, I think the debate so far has focused almost entirely on housing, but I think it's worth pointing out that the issue goes far beyond that. You're receiving people who are deeply traumatised, some of whom have been victims of torture, some of whom have experienced chemical police kit injuries, for example, which have not been seen since the end of the First World War. Any approach we need to do has to be a multi-agency one. It is not an argument for not doing anything, but it is an argument for thinking through clearly what we do. We have to ensure that there's adequate medical facilities are in place, educational facilities capable of dealing with non-English speaking children. How many Arabic interpreters, for example, do we have in the education system in this county? And also the capacity of the health system. Yes, we have excellent health facilities. We also have a hospital which is based in special measures through not actually being able to meet the demands of the indigenous population 5 days ago. So, yes, I think we ought to do something, but I think it has to be clearly thought through, and it has to be a multi-agency approach. You cannot just put these people in houses and leave them to it, which seems to have been the thrust of the debate so far. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, could I just reiterate what Councillor Gardner said, that it is a multi-agency issue. And one of the things I would like to point out is the fact that there's a change.org petition already, and this lady has come to speak to the council today about her own petition, means for me there's a lack of understanding among the general public, a lack of awareness about what can be done and may be done and is being done. I think there is a priority to try and get some of that information out. And I think from the first point of view, we need to get our own position straight on what it is that we intend to do or want to do, and get a clear indication of what central government has already committed to. There is a general sense of slight scaremongering among the general public, and even a sense of fear. We have to be very clear that that is not the case. There are 20,000 people coming in as a maximum over the next 5 years. Those people will be genuine refugees, and the government is asking for local government and local councils to be part of that process. We should be part of that process. We should be aware that we can't have people going into other people's houses, unfortunately, because there are lots and lots of issues there. Just as Councillor Bartlett said, these people are already vulnerable and they need to be placed in situations where there is complete support and control. So at the moment, it just seems to me to be a vacuum that needs to be filled. I can understand why Councillor Bridget, I forgot your second name. Councillor Smith wants to try and set up some sort of a group to get things moving. I can also understand the reluctance on the part of the cabinet not to do that. But it does feel to me as if something isn't done, something simple isn't done, then we're going to be left in this sort of hiatus situation. We just need to grasp the nettle here a little bit more firmly and make a decision. It'll stop all the talking. And there are people who are directly involved, like Mark, for example, who has to make some decisions. But I think we're in a position where I think we need to send a message to the public that we have a position, we understand the issues, and we're moving forward with a specific purpose.
Councillor Lockwood?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that it's silly to get into the details just now. I think all we need to do is express a wish to help. I don't think we need to go any further, and I would urge us all to do that.
Councillor Howell?
Well, I've listened very carefully to this, but let's get it down to brass tacks. What you're actually asking South Cambs to do is provide housing. We don't do services. That's very much down to the county council. It's housing you're looking at. Okay? We don't know yet the facts and figures. We don't know yet. The government is saying possibly 10 per local authority. That's correct. In Cambridgeshire, all the local authorities, only us in the city, have those particular houses under our control. The rest of the county do not. So what would that mean? Would that mean that all the counties that would have gone to East Cambs, Fenland, Peterborough, Huntingdon, do they come to South Cambs into the city? We do not know. There are too many we don't know. What we do know is that the Good Samaritan had money, and that's what we have done. We put a 900 million now, we put in another 100 million, we've given £1 billion to the camps over in Syria and Jordan, and guess what? Only the United States have put in more money than us. We should not be ashamed as a country of what we've done already. What else have we done? Since 2011, we have also given 4,000 refugees places in this country already. Where's the shouting about that? Where's the saying we've already done that? No, since 2011 we've accepted 4,000. So I'm sorry, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, why should we be twice what we've already done it, and yes, we can do more. I've got no problems with us doing more. I think that's a good thing. But I cannot accept what this motion says at the moment until I have more information and until we know brass tacks what's actually going to happen. How is it going to affect your constituents? Because in the end, what you're doing, if you actually say this, saying yes, we will accept this for South Cambridgeshire, you're saying one of the people who live in my village can't have a house because I'll give it to somebody else from outside South Cambridgeshire. What we're saying, to me, I've said this several times, It makes no difference if it's from Syria, Swansea or Swindon. They're outside South Cambridgeshire. We're putting those people from outside South Cambridgeshire before we put people from Stapleford, Sawston and Swavesey. That's what we're doing. We're putting other people before South Cambridgeshire people. Lovely to open up the doors. I think that's wonderful. We've got a homeless list downstairs. I am crying out for bed and breakfasts to accept people on our homeless list. These people want to give homeless to Syrian people? Fine. Give it to South Cambridgeshire people who are homeless now, today, tonight. I've got 19 people on a Class A and homeless. They're at the top of the list. We've got 26 families who are priority homeless. Let's break that down. 15 of them are waiting for temporary accommodation, which is 19 children in South Cambridgeshire now, today. So I'm sorry, before we start looking at Syrians, before we start looking at anybody outside our own border, let's look at home. Let's look at what we've got to do here first. I recommend we note this report. We note it. I am quite happy when information comes forward to come to my portfolio, and I will have a portfolio meeting just on this subject. But at this particular time, I think this petition is not something we can support. Therefore, I ask the members to note it only. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for Councillor Howe's proposal to note it? We need to take the first proposal first, which was Councillor Smith. Yes.
Thank you. Right. Okay, so I foresaw the sort of response we have from Councillor Howell, which is why I made my recommendation that we set up a cross-party working party to look at this. It's not, so my recommendation is not about housing. I fully appreciate the issues we have with homelessness, because I'm one of the main referrers of homeless people through to this council, and the response is always marvellous. So I just think, in order to address some of the points that Councillor O'Brien's made about ensuring...
It has nothing to do with the petition, I'm sorry.
Well, you're allowed to recommend a working party in response to a petition. I have checked that out, actually. Thank you. So in order to address mounting hysteria that might not be evidence-based, in order to allow this council as a whole to consider the information and guidelines that come through from the government, I would like us to consider setting up a working party to do that, so we can take control of the situation and make sure that the information we're putting out there is reasonable. I talked to Councillor Edwards the other day about I have a small experience about having to flee a country. When I was a child, I lived in West Africa, and we had to flee overnight. And I was 7 years old, and I can still replay the whole journey where we left where we lived in the hills and drove in our car down through the riots to the docks where there was a ship waiting for us, and we left the car with the doors open and we got on the ship. Fortunately, it was a ship, it wasn't a tiny little boat like these people are getting on. So when I see these people, that I replay that minute by minute. So I understand, to some tiny degree, I understand the fear there. So, can we please just create an opportunity for us to give this proper attention, multi-agency approach, and just make sure that we're not having a knee-jerk reaction here, as I said before.
I'm not in favour of a working party. However, I am more than happy to hold a regular portfolio meeting if you wish to discuss this particular topic. The topic we will discuss on a regular portfolio meeting only. But it will be very general that that particular group will have no powers whatsoever, but I'm quite happy to have that meeting.
Are you prepared to accept that as opposed to your proposal for a working party, working group? Yes or no?
I would rather have a working party.
Then obviously I can't support that.
So we have a proposal by Councillor Smith, we have a seconder by Councillor Williams. We need to take a vote as to whether...
Do I get a right of reply?
I think you get a right to reply.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Howell. I don't see that the working party is going to get us anywhere further forward. It would be nice to do, it would give everybody a chance to sit round and talk and do things like that, but it is not going to help this problem one iota. Because at the end of the working party makes a recommendation to Councillor Howell. So why go through this additional stage? Why have the problems of setting it up? Why have the problems of calling all the people together when I don't believe that it will actually accomplish anything? We all agree that something has got to be done. The only argument is over the practicalities of it. Nobody has said we shouldn't do anything. Nobody has said we shouldn't work with the county. All I've been saying is that until the county get the details and we talk to the county, we don't know what to do. And I cannot see how a working party that doesn't link together the county, this council, the county and the government, working out a properly thought out plan is going to get anywhere. So I'd ask you not to set up a working party, to stick to the offer of Councillor Howell that he will have a special portfolio meeting, and don't forget every single councillor can go and the meeting will be held in public. So I don't see that we're doing anything wrong. I ask you to vote against it and merely note the petition.
We will take a vote. If you agree, a recorded vote. If you agree that we should have a working party set up, then press the green button. If you disagree that we should have a working party, press the red button. Everybody voted? Cicely, why are you flashing? Try pressing it again. Right. So we have yes 11, no 33. So the proposal falls. I understand there's a question as to whether Councillor Murphy's vote was recorded or not. I shouldn't be against the slide. All right, it has been recorded. Fine. So now we move to Councillor Howell's proposal, and we have a seconder from Councillor Manning that we should agree to note the petition.
As opposed to
Not agreeing to note.
And then we would presumably have a vote about whether to agree the petition or support the petition or not.
No, we're going for number 3. Note the petition.
So we don't get the opportunity to vote to support the petition.
No.
Otherwise, therefore, proposal
It's
is
one of these items,
There are three
as
options.
I understand it.
There are three options.
And we have, there were lots of options, but nobody moved them during the debate. So we now have 2 options, one which we've already dealt with. The second one we are about to deal with, which is note the petition. And you need to vote as to whether you note it or not. So if you do want to note it, you press the green button.
Is it not, in a sense, implied in the paper petition that we vote on whether to support the petition or not?
No. But given that there were 3 or 4, there are several options, they have to be proposed, is my understanding.
That wasn't made clear, I said.
Well, we've got to where we are at the moment, and where we are at the moment is voting whether we note the petition or not. And
is it not true that if we vote not to note the petition, then it's possible for somebody to make another proposal for another one of those false actions? Is that not correct?
so, those in favour will vote the green, those against will vote the red. Whether or not you note the petition, I've said it. several times. Right, everybody voted. Right. So we have noted the petition and the motion is passed. Can we move on to the next item on the agenda, please? Number 8. 8A, Councillor Edwards. Financial Management.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a report that came through from Cambridge. Members will remind themselves that we have recently appointed a new head of finance, Mrs. Caroline Driver, who unfortunately can't be with us today, but she was with us at Cabinet and we were able to say hello to her and welcome her to the authority. This is a shared post with the City Council. So we are obviously working very closely with the City Council, and this is going to be the forerunner to looking at a new shared service on the finance service with the City Council. Alongside this, members will know that we've already started a shared service with the City Council in Cambridgeshire for our ICT service. This particular shared service for ICT does allow us to generate more cost savings and more efficiencies by joint procurement of ICT systems. And this financial management system is a very good example of that. The business case that went to Cabinet sets out that this will be, on a revenue basis, self-funding. So there are no additional burdens on our medium-term financial strategy in revenue terms. I was very keen to make sure that this washed its own face and hands and didn't cost us any more than our existing system. But there will be a one-off capital cost of up to £190,000, which is the recommendation for us today. It's outside of the budget that we agreed back in February. Now, the business case also sets out that it is not absolutely essential when we change our financial management system today. We could muddle along with the system that we have, but I think that would cause a number of problems for us. It would make us very much out of step with the City Council and Cambridgeshire if we were then to go and have a shared service with them. We would then have to change our system to a later date, which would be much more expensive to do at a later date than it would be today. We get that benefit of joint procurement today, so it will be cheaper. It does indeed pave the way for us to look at shared service with the city, if we so wish. But it also makes us very consistent. We've got the same head of finance who's going to be dealing with two different systems, producing two different types of reports, and working in a very different way to authority. That makes it very, very cumbersome. At the moment, the system we have, we could muddle along a bit, but it's very, very inefficient. We don't have the right management reports coming out of it. Very difficult to monitor our finances accurately. And with our financial situation as it is at the moment and in the future, it's really important we have timely management accounts, monitoring information, and things like automatic procurement. It has knock-on effects because we are targeted to pay our business suppliers within a certain period of time frame. That's very difficult with the system we've got at the moment. There isn't an automatic system. With a new financial management system, it allows us to place an order with a supplier, and the payment goes out automatically at the end of the process without any manual intervention. It's a very, very efficient way of doing business, and it actually makes a lot of sense in paying our suppliers on time. As I said, if we didn't do it now, when we do have to upgrade our system, which won't be too far in the future, because I know that the current system is very old, it will be more expensive. So we're effectively relying on our Office of Goodwill. We have a fantastic officer team in our finance department, as we know, because we've been sailing a very difficult course on finances, and we've been doing it quite brilliantly, which is all down to our officer team. But they're having to work in very difficult circumstances without the right tools, and there will come a time when we might drop the ball because they haven't got the tools to do the job that they need to do. So I think that it's absolutely right that we change our financial management system now. I'm asking for a council approval to spend up to £190,000. I hope it's going to come in much less than that. The recommendation is that I get delegated approval to spend up to that value in consultation with the head of finance and Mr. Collier. And I just hope the council can support me in this endeavour. Thank you very much.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Well, those who were at Cabinet will know that my group was very unhappy about the report that was presented. And I'm surprised actually that the summary doesn't mention that the range for this financial management system was from 100,000 to 190,000. And I think that gives a flavour of the report. The report was very brief, it was 3 pages, given something that we were being asked to we're being asked to accept. 100,000 in some other organisation may not be a big amount of money, but certainly in South Cambridgeshire, the figures that we deal with, 100,000 to 190,000 is certainly a big amount of money from our reserves. And to suggest that we can make a decision about that on 3 pages of a business case, which had actually very little detail in it because the officer accepted herself that it was at an early stage and they hadn't actually gone into it in any great detail. And the fact also that it wasn't urgent, that it could actually be put off by a couple more months so that a more detailed report could be provided. As a result, my group decided that we could not accept that report. And you couldn't possibly make a recommendation to spend £190,000 on that report. So it does. So I just want to put on record that my group, we accept the need for this, but we were disappointed and concerned that the actual report that went to Cabinet was not sufficient enough to really this council to be able to make a decision on this. And as I say, this sort of makes me suspicious that the difference in what we're being asked to accept, 100,000 to 190,000, is not actually mentioned in this summary to this council. To actually demonstrate that, you know, there was no detail in this to make us, you know, for value for money purposes, to give us confidence that we were actually getting value for money from this exercise.
Councillor Burkett.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm speaking to second the motion, and I'm speaking to you really in my capacity as the Chairman of your Corporate Governance Committee. And as I think you know, we call it in this Council a Corporate Governance Committee, but actually one of its functions is to be the Audit Committee. So we're the Audit Committee of the Council. And in our Audit Committee meetings, we talk a lot about our systems because they come up the whole time whenever our internal auditor, who reports to us at every single meeting, or our external auditor, who reports to us once a year, the theme of systems comes through the whole way. It's absolutely, totally and utterly crucial that we have good, robust systems, or we will get bad management information, we will make mistakes, we will make inefficiencies, we will have frauds, and we will have errors in our accounts, and we will be then criticised in our internal audit and our external audit. So I just regard good systems as totally and utterly non-negotiable, and that we have to spend money. In the report, it says some of our systems and some of the coding dates back to 2004, and 11 years it seems to be an age in IT and systems and programming now, and we simply have to update it. One of the things that I'm proud about this council, and I always tell my residents, is that we're very efficient, we're very well managed, and we're very low risk. And I really think that should continue, so I'm very, very happy to support this expenditure on your behalf as Chairman of your Audit and Corporate Governance Committee.
Any other speakers? Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note, it's quite interesting really, the fact that we're looking at spending somewhere between £100,000 and £190,000 on a piece of software to make us so-called more efficient. But then what occurred to me was maybe I'm listening to President what Councillor Edwards was saying, but it seems to me that our current system is not fit for purpose. And so therefore, we need to change it. So it begs the question, just how the heck have we been managing? Right? Well, whatever. Anyway, perhaps you might want to put in the back of your minds, if we're not spending 100k and not 190k, perhaps that difference will go towards helping the Syrian refugees. Thank you.
We will take a vote. All those in favour of supporting the financial management system as described by Councillor Edwards, to press the green button for yes and the red button for no.
I waited sometimes to see.
Okay, now everybody voted? Right. Four in favour, 8 against and 3 abstentions. So the motion is passed. Can we move on to item 9, appointment to the Independent Remuneration Panel? Councillor Manning.
I would like to propose this, if I could, Chairman, that there are in fact 2 sections. Section A is to reappoint Kevin McIntyre as a member for a 3-year term, and the second one confirms that the level of expenses paid to the individual members should be not more than £200 per financial year. So, I mean, this is not actually a huge paying job in the first place. I would like to recommend A and B to Council.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Thank you. I'm happy to second this, despite the fact that we always ignore what we recommend. And I just an appeal, please. I'm sure in the past we've been supplied with CVs of people who we appoint for this sort of thing. Could we please in future have their CVs so we actually know who they are?
Thank you. Are we all in favour of this? Moving on to item 10, appointment to outside body, Cambridge Sports Hall Trust Management Committee. Councillor May?
I would like to recommend Councillor Ben Shelton for this, a young and active member who is obviously going to take more interest in some of our members. I understand it's about 15 years since we last had a member, so you don't have to keep referring to your predecessor.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Shelton? Councillor Smith.
Well, I should like to nominate Councillor Henry Batchelor as a far superior of athleticism and sportsmanship, possibly also younger. So I think that he was a far better representative on this committee than any other member in this room.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Batchelor? Any other nominations? Do we have any other nominations? Would those 2 gentlemen like to leave the room? And we So the red button was the yes button, if I'm... No, sorry. The green button was the yes button. So that's Councillor Shelton. And so Councillor Shelton has been elected. Councillor
Chairman, I wonder if we can check if there are substitutes allowed. I wonder whether the two gentlemen concerned could do it between them, Councillor Shelton, if he can't go ask Councillor Thatcher.
Right, item 11, question on joint meetings. Anybody? No. Good. Question on the Greater Cambridge City deal. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Well, if I can remind you, we had 500 million. We had a 500 million pound promise from the government towards this deal, but the 400 million of that was dependent on how we spent the first 100 million. And it's becoming obvious now, as we go into this, that although we may have some shovel-ready schemes, public consultation, lack of officer resources is meaning that we are not bringing these schemes to fruition quick enough to spend the 100 million. And it does concern me, and I believe it concerns other people elsewhere, both officers and members, that clearly if we don't spend the 100 million in the first 5 years, as the government expects, then that will put in jeopardy the 400 million, the 200 million subsequent pots. I would ask, therefore, do we have a contingency? At which point do we bring in a contingency to ensure that we do spend the first 100 million on time? Otherwise, we will put in jeopardy the whole of the city deal scheme.
Councillor Mann.
I share your concern. It's been one of the biggest disappointments to me, the pace at which the city deal is moving. I've been very disappointed over it. It seems that we are bogged down with consultation after consultation after consultation after discussion after and nothing seems to be happening. However, you're not entirely correct, because the first tranche is going to be judged on whether the schemes are on time or on budget. So if the scheme doesn't start until 2019, because that's the plan and the budget is in place, etc., then we have actually met the criteria. Now, to me, that is not a good way of doing things, because this is very urgent. But if you keep reading the reports, some of the schemes are not due to go out to tender until 2019. In one particular scheme, I asked why we had to go out to public consultation, come back, discuss the results of the consultation, decide on the preferred option, go out to consultation on the preferred option, then when it's been agreed, put in a planning application, go out to public consultation on the planning application, and then finally take 2 years after that to work up the scheme. I am assured it's because there are so many opponents that we will get hit with a judicial review if we make the slightest mistake in the process. And we have to be able to convince a judge that we have consulted to the nth degree and far more than anybody else would have wanted. My personal opinion is that we should just, in the program of BT is, full steam ahead and down the torpedoes.
Councillor Van der Weyden.
Thank you. Earlier on in the city deal process, I asked the leader about how he felt of the role of the Assembly in the city deal. I was just wondering whether he thinks the relationship between the board and the Assembly has been improving. How has it been?
Councillor Mann.
I'm sorry, I didn't entirely understand the question.
I shall have to repeat it. I just wondered how, previously we discussed about how the relation between the Assembly and the Board was functioning. I was wondering what his views were now about that relationship between the two. Is it
My take is that the Assembly and the Board are working well together. I don't actually see that there's any great problems. I believe that the Chairman and probably the Vice Chairman is coming on to the City Deal Executive, and they're not only giving us the minutes, they're also giving us a steer and a report on how things were and the feeling of the meeting and things like this. I'm not in any way dismissing the idea of public consultation, nor am I dismissing the idea that people come along and ask questions. I'm merely saying that I believe that the City Deal Executive should actually give a steer and should give a positive suggestion along with the other alternatives and go out to public consultation saying we think this is the best idea, but these are the alternatives, what do you think? Instead of going out to public consultation, asking everybody to come up with schemes, which I think then takes up a lot of officer time discussing each individual one. Does that help, Tom?
Councillor Smith?
That's quite interesting, actually, because what I was going to ask kind of leads on from what you've just said. Anybody who reads the Cambridge News will know that there are a lot of people with opinions, both individuals and organisations, one of which we have in front of us, about potential solutions to the problems which the City Deal is trying to change. The point I made to the Assembly last week is that it is arrogant of us if we think we are the only people with good ideas. By we, I probably mean county council officers, actually. And it could be that some of these individuals or organisations possibly have some very good ideas, perhaps not in their entirety, but perhaps in part. So how is the executive going to give proper consideration to suggestions and solutions coming from outside of the county council, and in case there are ideas that could actually add huge value to the solutions which are being worked up?
Councillor Manning?
I think the answer is very easily, and we would welcome it. There is, of course, the present bond initiative, which has come entirely from parish councils and the local councillors rather than any other system. And yet it's beautifully researched, it's well done and everything else, and I would think it was being taken very seriously by the officers and the members of the executive. So that's one suggestion. However, I think you're slightly dismissive of the roles of councillors and parish councils because with the best will in the world, people can put forward suggestions and they then have to be researched and looked at. One suggestion that was put forward, I have been reading the officer reply to it, and it is 72 pages long. Now, whether you need all that information, I don't know. Whether you want all that information, I don't really know. But the point is that if you make a suggestion and it's worth taking seriously, I assure you that the officers do give it their full consideration. And if you'd like the 72 pages, I'm sure I can get you a copy.
Councillor Capital?
It's a query, but it's always been, I think, debated at the Cabinet, this question of the affordable houses that we're supposed to be taking as a result of the City Deal. I just want really an assurance that we will look equally at all sites that may be suggested, irrespective of the owner. This was touched on, I think, at the Cabinet at some stage, and I would be, I assume, I'll be horrified if my assumption's wrong, but I would assume that we would look at planning terms and up terms and the mechanism we have for exception sites is still intact, so we can actually continue to adopt or rather continue to fulfill the policies we've had in place for many years, where we looked at the planning issues, we looked at local acceptability, and we looked at local need, but the land, the person who owns the land was not a particular consideration, and it's looked at all other factors. So what I'm really saying is that we would look equally at all sites irrespective of the landowner. That's what I assume. I think we've done in the past, will continue to do. Thank you.
Councillor
I assure you that we will listen. I also think something that's frequently forgotten is that South Cambridgeshire District Council and the county councils are partners. It tends to be referred to always as the Cambridge City deal, and it tends to always be seeming to deal with Cambridge City. But it does actually cover far wider than that. There's the skills agenda, there's actually improvements which are outside the city boundary. It's just that in the first instance, it appears that we're concentrating on Cambridge City. But I assure you that we're listening, and South Counties will have their voice.
Councillor Tinsley?
Thank you. Does the leader consider that the city deal so far is a success or a failure? And depending on his response, does he think that that is a view shared by the majority of South Cambridgeshire and Cambridge City residents?
Councillor Manning?
Is that what they call a leading question? I think, taking the second part first, I think it's a great shame that because it's called the Cambridge City deal, there are actually a lot of residents of South Cambridgeshire who don't think it much applies to us, and it's all to do with Cambridge City. I don't really think that people spend a lot of time looking at it. I think they see the Cambridge Evening News, and it's another night, another suggestion. Every week we go from something like the city deal could pay for tunnels to we could pay for a hover track, or we could do something. So I think most people are not engaged with it. And one of the reasons they're not engaged with it is because nothing physical has yet happened. I think once we start to do things, and once we start laying tarmac or whatever, putting in cycleways, things like this, so that something physically is happening, I think more people will be engaged. As councillors, you know this is the same problem that we always run up against. Something is suggested, nobody takes much notice until the day it's implemented, and then your phone calls start because everybody says, I didn't know this was going to happen. So I think that's the answer to the second part. As to whether it's been a success, I think it's a good thing in as much as whatever else it has done. It has made close working between ourselves, Cambridge City, and the County Council. And whatever else it has done, it has brought forward really close cooperative working on transport, on all these other things, which might not have happened without the focus of the city deal. The other point I would say, yes, I am disappointed with the progress, but I keep promising myself that suddenly it will put on a spur at a speed that will surprise all of you.
We'll move on to the item 13A, question from Councillor Shelton. Councillor Shelton?
Thank you, Chairman. Question is as per the order paper.
Councillor Howell?
Thank you, yes. Well, the long and short of it is because of the 1% reduction from year on year, which will not only include the 1%, don't forget, it will also include any percentage we would have put on top, 2 to 3%, so it's actually a 4% gap there. We estimate at the moment we're going to lose £12 million in the HRA account over the next 4 years. And over the course of the 30-year business plan, don't forget, that's 134 million. This is on top of the parity where we were going to aim to try and catch up with council taxes, and we were allowed to put so much money on top of council tax. I think I remember it was £2. So whatever the percentage rise was, we would also put £2 on. That was taken from us a couple of years ago. So our 30-year business plan has taken a bit of a hit, to say the least, at the moment, which is not good news. With regards to cap on benefits, figures we're estimating at the moment, we're still waiting for some information from the Department of Work and Pensions. We estimate of the £20,000 cap on benefits, we recommend that 94 current council tenants households will be affected, and a further 166 in the district of home. These, I'm going to read this directly, these households are affected in different ways depending on their family composition, but some households will be left with insufficient money to pay their rent. That's the big one. We are very, very concerned. We are trying to work with people now. We've been trying to, since this came out, we've identified the people, we're trying to work with them as much as we possibly can to help them. If evicted, and obviously they become homeless, and I've already spoken about homeless in the previous agenda item, obviously they'll need support, statutory support will become available, and that will be a further hit on our general fund. So that's the way we are at the moment. And obviously there are other parts of the benefits cap that will, sorry, not only the benefits cap, there are other parts of the chance of speech that affects these people as well.
Councillor Shelton, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chairman, and I thank the portfolio holder for his response. So, with regard to the response that he's just given, what are the Cabinet senior officers doing about this with regard to ministers and people at central government? And are you explaining that there are special and exceptional circumstances in South Cambridgeshire?
Thank you, Chairman. The problem we have is that everybody through the country says they're special and they're exceptional. And that's the problem we have. The way that South Cambridgeshire is especially affected is, of course, because of the high housing rents for those 166 families that are not in council houses. Now, they may be in housing associations, which are slightly higher. We are trying to identify people, we're trying to work with people, we're trying to look at how we can actually manage help them to manage their budgets. With regards to the ministers, we have got a meeting which I'll be referring to later on with the Brandon Lewis. We've spoken at length to Heidi Allen, who's one of the two MPs that cover this patch. So we're making people know that this is really hitting, and what we are really concerned about is obviously people losing their homes. That's the biggest thing we're looking at. Is it going to mean that people actually lose their homes and we have a bigger problem then on the general fund? But it's something that everybody through the country is now saying about, and that we have to look at how this is actually done in the 20,000 benefit cap. We can understand why it's been done. We just don't think at the moment that in certain parts of the country, if you have a blanket 20,000, it's going to be very different in South Cambridgeshire to other parts of the country where the rent isn't so high.
13B, Councillor John Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Something on the paper.
Councillor Howell.
Thank you. Well, as some of you may be aware, in June of this year, we were successful in our bid for £200,000 to fund from the Right to Buy Fund. Now, what this does, this gives any council tenant or council tenants with requirement up to £20,000, then which we draw down from the government. We don't actually have the money. We draw it down from the government for them to go and be able to purchase a house outside the HRA, outside a council house. That then releases up a council house for other families to come in. One of the reasons they might want to look at doing this is the house for some reason is suitable, not in the right location, they want a bigger, smaller, different type of house, whatever. So we can support up to 10 people. We've advertised this quite extensively in the Tenants and Leaseholders magazine, and also we put up a web page just on this matter. We've had quite a few expressions of interest on this particular issue, but to this point in time, from June, we have had no applicants whatsoever.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to ask the portfolio holder, when do we have to spend this money by?
To be honest with you, I couldn't answer that question precisely, but I will find out that answer. The problem that we have, and it's a wonderful problem to have, people live in damn good South Cambs houses. We provide very, very good houses, and people are reluctant to go and have £20,000 and a huge mortgage when they have at South Cambs house. The other thing is, don't forget, that they can claim up to, depending on how long they've been there and other factors, up to £77,000 off the council on the right to buy. So, you know, a £20,000 is, again, it's because of the location we are. £20,000 is very good to buy a house. However, buy your house, if you meet all the criteria and you've been there long enough, you can get up to £77,000 off. I can't blame people for staying where they are and not drawing down on this. I will find the answer to your question.
Thank you. Moving Moving on to 13C, councillors.
That's on the paper, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. The council has had to refund a total of £1,034,544.64 as rebates to the medical practices that have successfully appealed their business rates to date. It's very difficult to estimate what's going to happen over the next 5 years because we don't know what appeals we're going to have in over and above what are already on the books. But those appeals that have already been lodged, and again, it's very difficult to estimate this because we don't know what the outcome of the appeal is going to be. But as I think you know, that we always take a fairly pessimistic view of these things. Over the next 5 years, we anticipate in the region of around £3 million will have to be refunded.
Supplementary?
Thank you. That's quite a shocking figure. Right, so what percentage of appeals are upheld, please, from medical practices?
Chairman, you know, I've done an awful lot of research on this subject, and I thought I had every single base covered, but that's one answer I can't give, I'm afraid. I can say that the majority of appeals have already come in, and they came in by the 31st of March this year. And the reason being is that the legislation changed in that appeals that were submitted after the 31st of March this year can only be backdated to April the 1st of this year. Previous to that, they could be backdated, I think, 5 years back to 2010. So everybody knew the legislation was changing, so they rushed to get their application for an appeal in before here. I can also say that our estimation has been, it's very difficult to estimate exactly what the level is. It's not a question of how many are successful, it's a question of the amounts of reduction. If they were all successful, it was a very, very small reduction, it would have been no impact to us at all, really. If there was only one successful one, it's a huge reduction, it could be a large amount. Oh, really? 100%. Apparently 100% have been successful so far in medical practices. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, it's a very complicated subject, it goes back to a recent tribunal case where a medical practice argued that their rateable value shouldn't be set by the normal method using the CMR method, which I think is the comparable market rental method. Because there were no comparable medical practices to actually judge what the market rental is for that practice. So they argued that it should be done on a different method. I can't remember the name of the method, but a different method. And we thought that there would be a very small reduction, a small difference, but in fact it was a vast difference, about 72% reduction, which was much higher than we thought. But it's something that's been on our risk register for a long time. It's something that we did know about all of these appeals coming in. We monitor that risk register. We have provision in our accounts for it. We have taken account of it in our medium-term financial strategy. Clearly that will be updated in November when we know more about the appeals that have been heard and we have a better idea of where we're going forward. But at the moment we have got a good handle on it, and I'm hoping that it's not going to impact us too badly.
Thank you. We move on then to notices of motion. So we start with Councillor Williams. Please.
Thank you, Chair. I think if anyone wants to know or understand the seriousness of where we are, I would ask them to look at the report to Cabinet on the 9th of February 2012. That report was a report on the Housing Revenue Account 30-year business plan from 2012 to 2042. And in that report, it drew attention to the fact that using the Localism Act and us basically buying off the government from taking out half our council rents, we would end up with a and I quote, our housing revenue account will become, in effect, a standalone, self-financing service with a turnover of around £25 million per annum and a debt of over £205 million. And that £205 million means that we will have an interest debt of 7.2 million. So I know Conservatives, always have money uppermost in their minds when they come to make any decisions. I think you will agree with me that that is a pretty serious situation for this authority to be. Because, as a result of the Chancellor's Checker's this budget, we are having to reduce our council rents by 1%, when in fact we had planned to increase them in line with inflation, in line with government guidance that was given at the time. And we are going to have to find money to repay back that £205 million loan. So this is a very, very serious situation, not just for those wanting affordable homes in this district, and that is quite a serious situation. I would draw your attention to, for example, Northstowe. At the time, we were saying that we required this money to ensure that Northstowe, we required the money to be able to build council houses to ensure that Northstowe had an acceptable level of affordable housing. We can't do that now. We can't guarantee that our housing, that our council housing scheme will even go ahead now. We are in a very, very serious situation. And it does worry me that before this meeting, I was asked if we would not withdraw our motion, but not ask that the Chief Exec write to the Secretary of State, drawing attention to this fact, because we might upset him, and he might get a bit angry and not help us. You know, well, words fail me really. Here we are facing an abyss on not only our homelessness and providing decent homes for people on low incomes in our district, and in fact we are also facing a financial mess, but we are too frightened to get the Chief Executive to write a letter to the Secretary of State to tell us. You know, I mean, this smacks so much of political, you know, shenanigans, really, isn't it? Because we are supposed to be here to represent the residents of our district. We should be here to represent the people on low incomes who cannot afford to live in this district because we are in one of the highest parts of the country with the highest level of economic activity, and yet we will not write to the Secretary of State to put it in writing, to put it on record what damage this government is going to do to this district council and its residents. I think that is shameful. I don't expect, because having had a discussion with the portfolio holder, I don't expect this motion to be passed by this council, because clearly you don't want to offend your government. But I can assure you, outside this place, there are very, very angry people about the way the Conservatives are going to treat the poor and those who need help from councils like this to find decent homes in an area where we have high house prices, and who cannot get the employment, cannot get the wages to pay the high market rents to live in this area. We're already seeing problems in recruitment in local government because people cannot afford to live here. It is a shame that this council will not stand up for those people, stand up to the government and get something done about this.
Thank you. Council Manning.
I'm sorry that Councillor Williams feels this way. Our attempt was that we absolutely agree with this motion. We actually approached the Liberal Democrats and asked them if we could do a joint response to this. Instead of that, Councillor Williams was more concerned with doing petty point scoring and a political round rather than trying to actually work together with the Conservatives on this particular issue. He knows full well that the only reason we said that we do not want to send a letter is because Councillor Howell and myself already have a diary date to meet the Secretary of State, along with 2 of our officers. We have had long discussions with Cambridge City Council and our opposite numbers. We have worked together with the Labour because Labour are more concerned with doing something than political point scoring. And Labour have said that if we do a twin track approach of us approaching our people, they will approach their people. We have the backing of Heidi Allen, who has been helping us enormously and has organised ministers. She has also promised if we don't get satisfaction in the first visit, we will go to other ministers. So I am very, very saddened. The only difference on it is whether we send a letter or whether you send 2 councillors, 2 officers and an MP talking face to face with all the facts and figures at our fingertips, or whether you think we'd be better to stay at home and send a letter. That's the only point at issue. And the Liberal Democrats could have had this as a joint one. Cambridge City Council and Labour are quite happy. I'm sad that you couldn't do it.
Can I ask for a seconder for this motion, please? Thank you, Councillor Smith. Are you seconding?
No, sorry. Yes, can I just make a point I would like to make a point of clarification. All right. Now, I did talk to Councillor Howard and Councillor Manning in Camborne late the other night after the Camborne by-election. And what I was asked was if I would ask my colleague not to take this motion to the vote. And it was explained to me, the reason for that 2 gentlemen thought that this might somehow interfere with the discussions that they had brought. I wasn't actually asked to do a joint. I was never asked to do anything jointly. All I was asked was to ask if this would not go to the vote. So I went to John, I asked him that. You know, it's up to him, it's his motion. I can't impose that on him. He has the right of free speech here. So I passed on the message and I passed on the reason for it. But it wasn't my understanding that there was the opportunity for a joint response for us. I'm sorry, because I'm sorry that wasn't obvious to me for whatever reason, because it would have possibly changed the conversation that I subsequently had.
I still need a seconder for this motion, please.
I'll second.
Councillor Smith. Right. Councillor Edwards.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. And I'd like to thank Councillor Smith for that explanation, because it's allowed my blood pressure to subside to a normal level now. And I think Councillor Manning has basically said everything that I was going to say. Only really wanted to support him. Sorry. I really wanted to support Councillor Manning in my views that the political point scoring here has just been unacceptable, and it just flies in the face of the assurances we were given that we would work together on things that we could agree on, and clearly not, which is a great shame. I just wanted to point out a couple of inaccuracies in Councillor Williams' speech and in his motion. He intimated that the amount of affordable housing at Northstowe would reduce for some reason. That's actually not true. The amount of affordable housing will be the same. It's a question of who the provider is. And I think we've often said that actually we don't really care who the provider is. I know Councillor Howard would like it to be the council. That would be fantastic if it was the council. We'll work towards it if we can. If it can't be the council, then it'll be provided by another registered provider. And that's fantastic. So the level of affordable housing also won't actually change. The other point is that in his motion he says that, in the middle of the motion, so thirdly, by the fact that the council will still have a 205 million loan to repay, which we took out to pay off our HRA debt. That's not a fact at all, that's a complete fantasy. We didn't have any debt when we had an HRA before the self-financing period. We actually took on the debt. We didn't have to take on a loan to pay off our debt. We have no debt whatsoever. It's an inaccuracy.
Right. Councillor Harford, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Most of what I wanted to say has been very well said already by the leader of the council. But I do want to make it clear that there is nobody in this group who is afraid of voicing opinions to members of the government in defence of our residents. You will recall that it was this administration that wrote to the Secretary of State voicing our concerns about the level of planning obligations when the level was raised, and that was a part of the evidence that secured the success of the judicial review. So there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this administration, this group, will always do what it needs to do to support our residents, and none of us is afraid to do that.
There are two members who have been in this chamber longer than me, and I will bow to them if they come up with anything different. Councillors Cathcart and Bard. But that's the first time in this chamber that I've ever known. I've had some right wrong-dingers with Councillor Page and Roberts, that a private discussion of which was said incorrectly was brought up in this chamber. And I'll tell you this now, I'm telling instructed by my leader, that will be the last. There'll be no more private discussions. You want to speak to me from now on, do it across here. Not you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams should not have brought up a private discussion, and you quoted me wrong. I will now continue. The leader of my group will instruct me. If the leader of your group can't control you, that's your decision. I will now carry on. Let's just think of something.
I'm for information.
I'm not sitting down, Councillor Williams. I will not discuss a private conversation. I will not discuss a private conversation.
You please sit down.
That is not true.
I will not discuss a private conversation. I will discuss anything over the table, no problems at all, not a private conversation. And by the way, if you are so supportive of council houses, then vote for the local plan where we're going to build some of them in some of them developments. With the exception of Councillor Hayes, I believe that all you have said no to the local plan. I am extremely annoyed. I am so annoyed for two reasons. One, because you know what I said in the chambers, what I said here is incidental. It's incidental. We're talking about people. That's what we're talking about. And I am fuming with the government. Am I frightened? No, I can tell you to his face how much I'm annoyed with him. We're not going to go and send a letter. We're not going to go and say a letter and hope for a return saying thank you very much indeed. Myself, Councillor Manning, Alex Collier, Stephen Hills, and our MP Ivy Hanlon are going to go down and say to his face, do you know the impact this is having? Not only now, but in the future, where we can't be building council houses. So am I frightened? No. What am I going to be frightened about? Representing the people who elected me here, representing the people of South Cambs? How can I be frightened of that? It's an honour. It's something I want to do. It's something I love doing. I am extremely annoyed about this, and I must admit, I just want to get this vote over with.
Councillor Cathcart.
I just want to touch on one element of this, and that is the right of housing associations. I think a case could be made out for exempting exception sites, because exception sites are one of the few opportunities for local villages to get housing for local people. Now, the problem is, I don't think the government fully appreciate the importance of some sites to rural areas such as this, and that if this goes ahead, then local, you can't determine if a house is sold basically to anyone on the open market, so you can't realistically, unless you put a covenant in it, that's which would be bad, that's unlikely, so it'll go to anyone. But the result that sites may not come forward because landowners will think, well, why should they give a site at below market value when the advantage goes to the first occupant and not the subsequent ones for long-term village occupation. So I think that if there is a diary case, it would be helpful to raise this with the minister to say, look, exception sites are particularly important to this area, and we feel, as the legislation is developed, that there's a strong case for exempting them from the right to buy. Certainly, I think housing associations should totally be accepted right to buy. That's not on the table, clearly. But there is, I want to reiterate, this strong case for rural communities such as ourselves being treated as a special case without necessarily damaging the government's overall policy, because probably the vast majority of housing associations don't come into the exception site category that we have. And as I reiterate, it's not just the house that we have now, but those sites which may come forward in the future, which could easily be jeopardised. So I just ask him to raise this as a specific concern and ask whether, as the legislation goes through, there was any scope for exempting exception sites from this white line. Thank you.
Councillor Hawkins, please.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to Councillor Edwards, I think it was, saying that council housing wasn't producing, so that affordable housing wasn't producing. Northstowe, as far as I recall, has only 20% of affordable housing to be built. Our standard is 40%, so it's already reduced, hasn't it? And if we're so concerned about helping people get on the housing ladder and providing for people on the housing waiting list, why did we accept to have just 20% instead of 40%? That's a normal standard.
Councillor Chopping.
Thank you, Chair. I sit with Councillor Williams in another place on the County Council Audit Committee. It's not as go-ahead as corporate governance, it's still an old-fashioned audit committee. And there, Councillor Williams is a model of sagacity and judicious intervention and moderation. And when he comes here, it all changes. And we get shame, disgrace, perfect storm, facing an abyss. And, I don't know, is it Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde? When I read this motion, I thought this is Councillor Williams pointing out some sensible things, and I personally agree with it. But, what we've heard this afternoon, some of the sort of points scored, it's just not helpful. My own view is that the Chancellor, and I'm not an expert on this, my own view is that the Chancellor has gone after the HR Act. And in all this, the ambitions of this council, Howard said, to do well by the less well off, to build council houses, then we have become some sort of collateral damage in this matter. And the way to manage that is to put our case face to face with candour and with clarity. And that is what I understand we are going to do. And it seems to me that is the best way forward.
I'm going to take Councillor Kindersley next, and then Councillor Edwards, and then ask Councillor Smith to wind up the motion. Okay?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, Councillor Howell recalled that he is the third longest serving member of the council. Just by a whisker, I think I'm fourth. Of course, I remember the days when Councillor Howell was also the youngest member of this council. And so I suppose what I'm going to say is directed largely at him. I think the reason why everybody's got rather over-aerated on this subject is because we all feel so very profoundly about it. Councillor Harford makes the point that we all fight very hard, or she hopes we all fight very hard for our residents, and I think by and large that is extremely true, we do. It also occurs to me, having listened to the debate, that there has been a certain amount of misunderstanding about positions taken, requests made, and so on and so forth. So what I'm, I suppose, asking is this. We've all had a go now. It's time to actually work together going forward in the future. I would very much hope that Councillor Howell and Councillor Williams will apologise to each other afterwards, kiss and make up. And we can all get back to doing what we do, which is representing our residents. But at the same time, we have to recognise we are political creatures in this chamber, and sometimes politics does rear its ugly head. And frankly, we should not necessarily be ashamed of that.
Thank you, Just a very quick point in response to Councillor Hopkins' point. The amount of affordable housing at Northstowe hasn't changed at all. Our policy, the policy that we have agreed as part of our local development framework, as a framework we have adopted, is 40% subject to viability. That was forced upon us by a government inspector, but we then subsequently adopted that as our policy. It's at 20% at Northstowe because our viability consultants agreed with the developers' viability consultants, and they both agreed that 20% was what was viable. And so it's completely in line with that policy, but it hasn't changed from that point.
Councillor Smith, are you going to wind up?
Okay, right, as the seconder, well, gosh, gentlemen, with all the testosterone flying around today, wouldn't get this if there was more ladies on the front bench. As Councillor Kindersley has said, the reason that spirits are running high is that we all actually agree about this. The motion, as I saw it, was a way of empowering those of you who have the honour to go and be able to speak to the ministers responsible, to give you a bit more, some more armoury to support what you're going to do. So the fact that a well-worded letter from this council, signed by all of us, as I said, it hadn't been suggested to me before that this would be a cross-party letter, but I would support that wholeheartedly, because there's no distance between any of us in this one. We're all in complete agreement. We all think it's an absolute disaster that's happened to us, and we are facing a catastrophe. So there's no difference there. So the idea of a letter, as I understand it, was to give you some more armoury there, to support you to then go and talk to your own government and try and resolve this. So I still think it's a very good idea. I know that you're feeling very cross at the moment, but please do look at it for what it is. It's actually an opportunity just to help. And perhaps, often when you're in debates with people, it's difficult to get all the evidence there. But a carefully worded letter, non-critical, but making suggestions could actually help you. And just finally, Councillor Howell, it is not that I can't control my group. I won't control my group because I respect them all as individuals and I trust them to make the right decisions.
Right. Well, I think we have a proposal and a seconder that, as on the order paper, if you agree with the proposal, press the green button, and if you disagree with the proposal, press the red button, and abstain by pressing the yellow button. Has everybody voted? We have 13 for the motion, 30 against the motion, and 2 abstentions. So the motion falls. Can we move on before tea break and before the next council meeting to the final motion proposed by Councillor Smith?
Well, actually, I'm exhausted by now, which I'm going straight to this. Okay. Right, just, I'm afraid that before I speak to the motion, I'm going to need to recommend an amendment to it. And the amendment is that on the 5th line from the bottom, I'd like it to say we welcome the original proposals being put forward by Cambridgeshire. Now, the reason for this is that I do realise that I can't force this council to align themselves with something that is a moving feast, as Councillor Burford has described it to me. So I would like the word original to go in there as the amendment, and then once we've got through that bit, then I'll talk briefly to the whole motion, please.
Can we do that? You're content? Does that amendment, is that seconded?
Does it need to be? It's my motion. Does it need to be seconded?
I think, because the motion so, 8. Right. That's seconded. Okay, would you like to continue with your proposal then?
Right, thank you. Okay, so the I've been looking up about green belts, and this is actually all about green belts. So what I have read on the official government website today says the government attaches great importance to the green belt. The fundamental aim of green belt policy is to prevent urban sprawl by keeping land permanently open. The essential characteristics of green belt are their openness and their permanence. And permanence is the most important word here. So there are a number of threats to the green belt around South Cambridge at the moment, and as I identified them in my motion, they come from possibly a revised local plan, definitely from speculative planning applications, and most likely from the city deal. Now, in our emerging local plan, we supported that very high level of protection to the green belt. We acknowledged it, we did a great big bit of work to support it. I think that's under threat now, and particularly if the inspector comes back and asks for another 5, 10,000 houses, I have no doubt that you are going to be looking again at the green belt and whether that high level of protection can be maintained. And I'm aware that there is an appetite in the city to allow Cambridge to spread out. The conversations I've had with people are about it spreading and the green belt moving out, so it becomes like skins of an onion, and the other is about allowing it to spread out but keeping green corridors. But green corridors are not open, as I described earlier, and the moving green belt is not permanent. So this is going against the absolute ethos of the green belt. The arguments I've had with people in the city is that Cambridge City needs to breathe. And I think they think that breathing means moving out. There's a lot of air above Cambridge City, and it's that air that should be breathing. And there's a big article in Cambridge News today that says Cambridge City is going to have to go upwards. And there's been a huge reluctance to do that. But there are places in the city where that could happen, but that's for them to debate and not for us. I really hope that this council will support excellent piece of work done here by a number of parish councillors and one of our members as well, which is recognising the importance of the green belt and the fact that not only does it preserve Cambridge City as a medieval town, the likes of which, doesn't exist anywhere else in England. But, to us, it protects our residents, and Cambridge City will crawl out towards us and embrace our villages. And where does that stop? And that fundamentally changes everything about South Cambridgeshire that puts us at the top of those lists of the best places to live in England. So, my motion is meant to be an easy motion for you to find acceptable. It's taking a brilliant piece of work here. Obviously, Councillor Bergen, I know will talk to this and say that it is a moving piece, but the essence of the original plans were that we preserve the green belt. It's what we did in our local plan, and I do hope that we can keep our commitment to the preservation of the green belt strong. Thank you.
Councillor Bergen.
Thank you very much indeed. Just 2 seconds on what Cambridge Bold is, so thank you very much indeed. The phrase comes from Councillor Hickford, who said we need a bold solution to Cambridge's transport problems. We then turned that into brilliantly organised, locally devised with business sense of humour. It's not by any means just me. It's Tim's area, it's Grenville Chamberlain's area, and then I know less as you go further west, but I've had meetings with me and Des, so it's a lot of us working together. I agree with everything, all the sentiments from Councillor Smith, but I'm afraid I think we can't take your amendment, and I think in fact it's like we just can't, because I'll explain why you've just completely changed it, and if I'm right, we aren't allowed to accept amendments that change the total thrust of a resolution, if that's right.
I don't think it negates it.
That negates it. I mean, well, I'll tell you why I think you've changed it. I mean, the reason that we started Cambridge Bold is You know how you start a race or a running race, you say ready, steady, go. Well, what the city deal said was ready, steady, pause 4 months, which was rather confusing to our local residents, because back in June they said, we're going to start a public consultation, and all our local residents got very excited, and then the public consultation will only start in October, so it's like ready, steady, pause. And all our residents said, we can't pause, we've got to get on with thinking about this. And that's what Cambridge's Bold has been about. But what it is a response to a public consultation, which hasn't yet started. So you can't, I'm afraid, much as it pains me, accept Councillor Smith's amendment to welcome original proposals, because it's like time travel. You can't, the original proposals were only a draft. They weren't the final thing. It says in the top right-hand corner, this is a draft document. It was never meant to be final. It would be wrong to accept them. It would mean we were not listening to all the people that we've asked to comment on it by mid-October. So it pains me deeply that it would just be wrong to accept the amendment. We've got to go a little slower on Cambridge Bold and give all the parish councils time to be the Campbell and the Hardwick Raining meeting in 2 weeks' time to discuss it. We as a council can't adopt it or even recommend it or likely to approve it until we've heard from more people.
Councillor
I won't speak just yet, Chairman, because I think we might put ourselves into a bit of a muddle procedurally. I understand that the motion needs to be seconded before we can debate it in the chamber, so I should be waiting. I'm totally sorry, I didn't realise it did say, I do apologise. Thank you very much. Right, I've got something to say.
That's a good idea, it is.
It is, yes. It is a good idea, or it was rather, it was a good idea. I agree with Councillor Burkitt. I don't think we can, I can certainly accept the amendment. And I would like to propose an amendment myself, actually, because one of the things that we must be careful not to do is to predetermine the outcome of the consultation before the consultation is finished. And we as a council must not predetermine ourselves. And I agree that this is a fantastic piece of work. There's very few pieces of work that I've seen of such quality come from a group of interested parties, perhaps when accepting Councillor O'Brien's contributions in the past, of course. But I'd like to suggest an amendment to the motion in exactly the same area as Councillor Smith drew our attention. And instead of saying we welcome the proposals being put forward by Cambridgeshire Bold, I think we should say that we welcome the proposals being put forward by Cambridgeshire Bold and all parish councils, pressure groups, interested parties and members of the public. I think that we welcome all input to this process, and I hope that it meets with your approval. Thank you.
I would second that. I have a proposer, a seconder, and the original motion proposer has accepted it. But are we now without the word original? So we go back to the original version, the original format written on paper, but we add after Bold and all the parish councils, communities, groups and pressure groups. Oh, I've got it all, I like it. And members of the public. Right? Are we all agreed on this?
Agreed.
Can we go there? Let's move on to item 16. And we will now break for tea and